tried to rob me. He's dead and I'm alive. He tried to pull a knife on me. I pulled my .45. All cops did was take my gun and drag me off to jail. No cops were there to help me live, but now I'm out on bail. I'd rather be tried by 12 than carried by 6. I'd rather live than die. I'd rather be tried by 12 than carried by 6. Let some other mama cry. I'd rather be tried by 12 than carried by 6.
And that scenario in the song is exactly why we have our next guest, Tim Schmidt, on the air. Tim is the founder of the United States Concealed Carry Association. They have an excellent publication, a magazine. They also have a plan whereby if you do get into a circumstance like in that break music, you have a place to turn, because most people have no idea what happens when they use or threaten deadly force in self-defense. If there is a person in front of you with holes in them bleeding, and you are standing there with a gun, when the police arrive, whether it's in the holster or not, the police are generally going to assign you the position of perpetrator, and the person on the ground the position of victim, even if especially if the reverse is true. The authorities are very, very good at prosecuting the victim, and if you need a place to turn, it's one of them is the United States Concealed Carry Association. Tim, welcome to the program.
Charles, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
My pleasure. I'm glad to have a guest who gets it. Explain to us what the concept was when you formed the United States Concealed Carry Association in or near Hartford, Wisconsin. When did you start it? Why? And explain what it is.
Oh, Charles, I started the association in 2003, so about 14 years ago. It started because I went through my own personal self-defense awakening shortly after I started having children. I realized, holy cow, this is my job to be the first line of defense, for my kids and for my wife. And as I went down that path, I realized, gosh, there's got to be an easier way to learn how to become this responsibly armed citizen. And so I started publishing a magazine that turned into an association. And then, as you mentioned, in 2011, we added probably the most popular benefit that our members enjoy, and that's the self-defense shield, which, as you mentioned, is essentially it's the ultimate legal and financial backup plan for when you're forced to pull that trigger. Because you're right,
or even threaten to do. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That are going to happen, and the USCCA is there for them.
People don't understand the vast majority of DGUs, defensive gun uses, people don't pull the trigger. But they're just as much, if not even more, at risk, because they think, well, I didn't shoot the guy, so I didn't do anything wrong, and they just don't understand there's some states that have protections, what we call defensive display legislation, but not many.
Right. You're right. Not many states do have that, and even in the states that do have that situation, that defensive display legislation, there's still a chance that you could still be arrested and then have to prove that yes, in fact, I was covered by that law, and that costs money.
Right. It sure does. It not only costs money, but it costs time and it costs stress. That's the kind of stuff that causes heart attacks. I mean, and you could tell stories. We could spend the next 2 hours talking about some of the stories, some of them actually in Tucson, like Larry H., that and that you guys have defended or helped defend, and I guess that your insurance has helped defend. But I don't want to spend the whole time on that. You're actually here to talk about the article you recently wrote on what Mr. Gorsuch, the nominee to the Supreme Court, might have, what effect his nomination might have on Second Amendment issues.
Right, yes. I think I can speak for all gun owners. When we breathed a huge sigh of relief when Trump was elected, and even a larger one now that Neil Gorsuch has been nominated to the Supreme Court. Trump had his hands full in the situation, in the sense that he had to replace Antonin Scalia. I mean, how do you replace a guy like that? Well, let me tell you, Gorsuch, I think, is going to be a fantastic replacement. This guy is a true originalist in the sense of, he doesn't believe that the Constitution needs to be reinterpreted. And if you look at all of his past cases, I mean, he holds true to the Constitution. So I think gun owners can can breathe that sigh of relief in knowing that he is going to uphold the natural-born right of self-defense, which is simply affirmed by our Second Amendment in the Constitution.
Thank you. I don't know that people, I hear people, I get interviewed all the time, BBC calls me up and they say, well, your Second Amendment grants you the right to carry a gun. It's like, no, it doesn't. And they do not get it. It's like, hello, English Bill of Rights, 1689, hello. And it's like, well, that hasn't penetrated our consciousness yet, Mr. Heller. It's like, ugh. How do you, do you need a mace to have it beaten into you? Oh no, that would be an offensive weapon. It just, the absolute, we need a new scale, the Rockwell scale, never mind that. We need the lunkheaded scale, to measure the thickness and the hardening of people's attitudes against the right to self-defense. I don't know how I do know how you read your magazine, I suppose.
It's as simple as this, Charles. Free people have the natural-born right to self-defense. If you don't have that right, then you are not free. And the framers of our Constitution, they understood that, and that's why they put the Second Amendment there to simply affirm it. And that's really all it is. It's an affirmation that free people have the right to defend themselves.
I tell English people, this is why you're a subject and I'm a citizen. But that doesn't go over. That goes over like the proverbial lead balloon. The reason is I found, after having gone there and discussed this with people, and if you ever want to have fun, go talk to an English Bobby who's carrying a Glock. No, I'm not kidding. The requirement.
Oh, really?
Pardon me?
I didn't know that. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, go to talk to an English Bobby who's one of the relatively rare ones who's carrying a Glock that's, like in front of the palace and things like that. The requirement to be on the firearm squad is to hate guns. I'm not kidding. If you express any enthusiasm for firearms or weapons of any kind, you're bounced. This is why they have a much higher percentage of accidents with English police and wrongful uses of force than when they do use force than they do in the United States, and it's because they hate guns. The cops who are carrying the guns, the job requirement is they have to have no enthusiasm for them. Well, if you don't like your job, are you going to do it well?
Of course not. That's so crazy.
No.
Oh my goodness.
Well, this is what I refer to as the English rectal cranial inversion on arms. But I'm way off the track. So we're here to talk to you and not to hear me. So shut up, Charles. I'm hoping that Trump can jack up the Supreme Court and change two of the flat tires, Ginsburg and Breyer. Have you read either of their opinions in the Heller case? It's only 158 pages. Have you read the decision's 158, but have you read the dissenting opinions on that?
Oh gosh, I thought about reading it, but I couldn't do it. So I have not. No, have you read them?
Oh yeah, I read Supreme Court decisions for a hobby. The dissents, they're not that complicated if you dig into them a little bit. The dissents in that are so disingenuous and so disruptive of the American spirit of freedom, about the inherent right to tools, and what Cesare Beccaria talks about the auxiliary right to arms. Self-defense means nothing if you don't have the tools to do it. And we're not just talking guns. Look at the knife problem in New York City, where they're calling a simple folding knife with a locking mechanism, they're calling these things gravity knives, and they're arresting people for serious misdemeanors. I mean, for this. That's what they're arresting people for, because it can open with one hand and it locks in position. The only way in New York you can legally carry a knife that's 3 inches is it has to have a magnet lock. Basically, you have to have a UK legal knife, less than 3 inches, and a no locking mechanism other than a magnet or something that holds it open. And it's
That's
nuts.
Crazy.
Yeah, the knife rights people are going after Cyrus Vance Jr., who has about the same attitude on weapons as the English. And I just hope that Trump can, like I say, jack up the Supreme Court and change 2 justices so that maybe for the next generation we'll have some rational rulings on right to keep and bear arms issues.
I'll tell you, Charles, sometimes I just have to, reflect back on some of the positive things. There's so much crazy laws and things like we're talking about. But the good news is that since 2014, gun ownership in the U.S. is up almost 38%, which is that's fantastic.
Well,
and here's another little piece.
Yeah, I would say I would add to that. Okay, and
yeah, okay, get ready for that button again.
Yeah.
Over the last 8 years, concealed carry permits are up 215%. See the button. So I mean, from my perspective, I mean, I truly believe that the more people that we can get to go down that path of self-defense discovery and really coming to the realization that, well, golly, you know, these firearms are not as they're not as scary as the mainstream media would have me to believe, and really what they are is they're empowering. You know, what tool?
Well, that's
what tool can?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
What tool?
Oh, I was going to say, what tool could give a 80-year-old grandmother an even playing field with a guy like me? I'm a big man, 6'4", 230 pounds. A firearm. That's what can happen.
Well, she could use a Cat D9, but she might not be so good on the controls as she would with a Glock.
That's a good point.
You know, I mean, it's a more powerful. Obviously, it's a more powerful weapon than a 9mm 40 or 45 or 357 SIG or whatever else a Glock comes in. But the point of the matter is that what it does is the gun decentralizes power. The gun democratizes, if I may bastardize a term. The gun democratizes, especially the handgun. It flattens power to the lowest level, and that's something that people who want to control your life detest.
So true.
That's
so true. So well said. Yeah.
Well, I've been doing this 18 years now, so I ought to do something right. You know, what I love is it has the effect that how people view the gun is the litmus test. There's a person who occasionally appears on this radio station as a guest, and in an economic related profession, and who was he says guns aren't important to freedom. And it's like, he's from New York City, I get it. In his life, guns weren't important to freedom, or at least in his knowledge, guns weren't important to freedom, because he didn't grow up around that. He grew up, however he did, that has nothing to do with guns. And he fears the gun. He absolutely fears it. And it's, to me, no, guns are the litmus test. How government views your authority to handle the tools of force are an absolute, complete and total litmus test as to whether or not you are free. You know,
yeah.
This is what guns do. They take power from the central planners, and they do this. They transport it right to your strong side. That's what guns do. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, stand by. We're up on our break, on our last break of the show, so let's go ahead and start that. And I will tell you, folks, we're talking with Tim Schmidt of the United States Concealed Carry Association, USCCA.com. You should be a member. It is insane to carry a gun without having a membership from them, because if you ever use it, you'll find out why in a real hurry. To keep us out of perdition, we are on America Armed and Free. We have the joy and pleasure of having with us Tim Schmidt. Tim is the head of the United States Concealed Carry Association and USCCA.com. You should have his insurance. You should have a membership. There's, I believe, 3 levels of coverage you can get in case you have to use force, and you now have somebody behind you. What happened, Tim? What happens if one of your members, has to either threaten or use force? Briefly, if you would, real briefly, tell us what the process is of using their membership in USCCA.
Yeah, it's really simple. So the first thing that they should do is they should call 911. And right on our membership card, it tells them exactly what you should say to the 911 operator. As soon as you're done with that, you call our 24/7, 365-day available critical response team. And we literally have a critical response attorney on call in every single state in the entire country, total of over 400 lawyers that are part of the USCCA network that are literally waiting for your calls right now. Obviously, you don't want to have to call them, but if you do, that's what happens. And that critical response team, case manager and attorney, they will get things going. They'll probably have things going before the responding officers arrive on scene. And from then on, the critical response team member takes care of it for you, whether it's bail bond, getting a payment, a retainer for the attorney, all of the coordination. They'll contact your family, let them know everything's okay. It's literally a giant easy button.
They'll let them know where you're incarcerated.
Exactly, right.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the monthly. And if they want to find out more information, USCCA.com, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
If they're one of those dinosaurs, what phone number would they call?
Sure, they can call 877-677-1919.
877-677-1919. All right.
Exactly.
Tell us a little bit about your publication. What do people see in the monthly publication?
Yep, so we publish a magazine called Concealed Carry Magazine. It's the official publication of the USCCA. All members get it. And the executive editor is Kevin Michalowski, a really close friend of, I believe you know him very well. Great friend of mine. He does a fantastic job. And really every issue of CCM is packed with every aspect of responsibly armed self-defense you can imagine. So there's all sorts of, gun reviews, gear reviews. There's always a profile of a USCCA member, so you can see that, hey, there's these responsible gun owners that carry guns every day. They're just like you and me. They're doctors, they're electricians, they're teachers, they're just everyday people. There's tons of great advertising. Not the kind of advertising that you see in a traditional magazine, but all these super cool custom holster makers or belt makers. So it's really just it's a really solid, pro-gun magazine.
I wish we could change that a little bit. I wish we could school everybody to keep saying pro-rights rather than pro-gun. I know
that's a good point.
I know it sounds picayune, but I got to tell you that I call it Corwinizing the language. And
that's a good point.
And that if you're pro-gun, then of course someone else might be anti-gun, and they sound like equally valuable points of view to the person who doesn't kind of understand it. But if you're pro-rights, the opposite of that is being anti-rights. And that is definitely a much easier sell to be pro-rights than necessarily to be pro-gun.
Yeah, good point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's not mine originally. It's Alan Corwin's. So, to that end, I want to talk a little bit about. That's probably all we'll have time to talk about is in this interview, and that is the idea of pending legislation for concealed carry reciprocity. Are you for it or against it? Do you have any fears, concerns? Go ahead.
I personally think that it's a great idea. I think it's absolutely insane right now that a responsible citizen who has a concealed carry permit, like say from Wisconsin, where I'm from, you have to research and study every single state as you travel to make sure that you don't show up as a responsible gun owner from Wisconsin who's now a felon in a different state. It's absolutely crazy.
And it has happened.
It's happened to our fellow members, our fellow USCCA members. We've had to defend people who they were flying in airplanes over states, and all of a sudden something happened to the airplane and it got rerouted. This poor fellow had to land in LaGuardia, and he had a gun in his luggage. He got deplaned. He had to recheck in. He got handcuffed and taken away in front of his wife and kids for simply, being on the wrong airplane. It's absolutely crazy.
And he was complying with the law to declare. He had to declare it.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, geez. I mean, the good news is that we got all the charges dropped, but it cost about $10,000.
And it probably cost him the guns.
No,
I bet he didn't get his guns back either.
Nope, never did. You're right.
Yeah, it's theft.
So, yeah. So no, I think it's a great idea. I think that here's another neat thing. I think it'll do a very powerful job of striking down all sorts of ridiculous anti-freedom city and local ordinances that, let's say, for example, in California, you have a concealed carry permit. Well, you take that down to Los Angeles, and there's all sorts of places that you can't carry that gun, and this will nullify all those laws.
Well, there are some people who say, "Oh, but if we do that, the federal government will come in and dictate the policy to the states, and we can't do that." Do you think there's anything to that?
I think that there's some validity if you were talking about having a national concealed carry permit. Okay, now so now you'd be in a situation where you're giving the federal government more power, and you're saying that this is a federal permit, but we're not talking about that. We're just saying that the federal government is going to say, look, states, you have to follow you have to honor each other's permits. That's all they're saying. They're not going to be creating any new requirements, any new restrictions. So no, there should be no fear in that at all.
Well, part of it is that they're worried that of violating the state's sovereignty. And one thing that might happen, and it might not be overcomeable, is, for instance, like the New York SAFE Act, which says you can't have more than 7 rounds in your gun. You might or might not be able to overcome that with the National Reciprocity Bill. Because if a New Yorker would only be allowed 7 rounds in their gun, an Arizonan or a Wisconsinite, I'm sorry, I mispronounced that, a cheeser from Wisconsin might be limited in the same way as a citizen of New York would under equal protection, under the 14th Amendment, equal protection under the laws. Yeah. So there is a question there.
Good point.
Well, I mean,
yeah, that's a good point.
I'm not trying to place something unmentionable in the punch bowl. All I'm trying to do is say that there are concerns about this.
Right. Well, I think for the most part the concerns are being overplayed. I really don't think it's going to be that big of an issue. I don't either, but I'm playing the devil's advocate to some extent because you're an expert on this. Do you have anyone working at the national level on this type of this idea about national carry? Are any of your people advocating for it? Certainly. I mean, from a content perspective, we certainly are. We do not have any lobbyists in D.C. The thrust of our legislative activism runs strictly through the Second Amendment Foundation. We're pretty much one of their largest supporters, and so that's how we handle that. Mm.
I do not comprehend some of the people who get aggravated with Alan Gottlieb there, about trying to do some good. He may have different methods than some of us, but, we're all in the same boat, and drilling a hole in one end or the other just makes no sense whatsoever. Okay, in closing, would you, we got about 55 seconds, would you like to tell us anything about USCCA, give the website or phone number again, anything like that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the neat thing about the USCCA is there's lots of ways to dip your toe in the water. You don't have to join, straight away. There's lots of free information. If you just go to the website, USCCA.com, there's lots of opportunity for you to do some research and truly understand what's the best way for you to take that path down, becoming that responsibly armed citizen. So I encourage your listeners to check out the website or give us a call at 877-677-1919, and I'm sure that we can be of value.
877-677-1919. So that's a fairly easy phone number to remember. I ought to memorize it like Dylan. Dylan's, right? 800-223-4570.
That's good.
Mike Dillon was really good at it, and may he rest in peace. All right, Tim Schmidt, it is a pleasure to have you on. We should do it every so often. We shouldn't let Mark Walters be the only one who gets some of your attention. So
I agree. Thank you, Charles.
Yeah, you're welcome, Tim. Have a great day. Join his organization. It's worth it. I want to encourage you to be vigorous, not violent, vigilant, not vituperative. In liberty, I'm Charles Heller.